Today, we're working on the backhand. During rallies, do you primarily use a backhand punch or a backhand rip? Today's main goal is to learn how to generate power while keeping the ball on the table. The punch and the rip each have their own distinct advantages. Against less advanced players, their shots often have no spin, making a punch easier to execute than a rip. If your opponent returns a flat ball, the backhand punch will produce a higher quality shot. However, if your opponent rips the ball with topspin, trying to punch it back will likely send the ball off the table. If they rip the ball with spin, you must counter with a backhand rip. If your opponent's return is soft, your basic response should be the punch. This is because a punch allows you to use your full power, often winning the point outright with a surprise shot. The rip is for handling spin. If you try to punch a spinning ball, you'll likely make an error. Today, we're focusing on the offensive backhand punch, but the power I use might be difficult for amateur players to achieve. The question is whether you can generate this kind of power with your punch. However, amateur players don't need to punch with this much force. For example, if you loop and your opponent blocks, or during a standard rally, this level of punch is all you need. At this speed, if you simply vary your placement between the middle, backhand, and forehand corners, your opponent won't have time to react. This works because the motion is small and the shot is unexpected. I'm showing you the pro-level punch, but for you, a large motion will cause you to miss the ball's contact point. Your goal should be a very small, compact punch. This type of compact punch has a high success rate and great consistency. Let me share my mindset. Most players, pro or amateur, rally from backhand to forehand. I use reverse psychology in matches. I start by attacking their forehand and then move to their backhand. I proactively play to their forehand corner very often. Once their attention is fixed on their forehand side, I switch back to the backhand, and they are usually out of position. Once they adjust and cover the backhand, I attack their forehand again. This is because rallies are about controlling rhythm and placement. For amateur players, placement is the most important factor, not raw power. Rallies make it easy to use your opponent's pace. If they hit hard and you try to hit even harder, you'll both make more mistakes. So, when you punch, don't just aim for their backhand, a good block will stump you. Attack their forehand or the middle first, and then go to their backhand. This is far more effective. The first critical point, your racket must be at the same height as the ball. Many players fail at this because their hand is lower than the ball. When the ball reaches its peak height, they are hitting upwards from underneath it. With that technique, a soft touch will just brush the ball, and a hard hit will send it long. Penhold players, pay close attention. If you don't have a reverse penhold backhand, your technique is falling behind. For short pips and medium pips players, the punch is even more crucial than for us inverted rubber players. Even against a backspin ball, your backhand racket height must match the ball's height. For any punch, regardless of rubber type, you must adjust your racket to the height of the ball. If it's high, you go high. If the ball is low, you must get down to punch it. If it's even lower, you get down further. You must always be positioned behind the ball, never underneath it. This is the first key to generating power. Staying behind the ball ensures your shot trajectory is flat, not an arc. Second key point, for a backhand punch, should we contact the center of the ball or the upper part? For any direct hit, the closer you are to the center of the ball, the more solid the contact will be. If you hit the top part of the ball, you risk hitting the edge of your racket. More importantly, your racket angle becomes unstable, creating unwanted friction, which results in a weak shot. Therefore, when striking the ball, whether forehand or backhand, always aim for the center of the ball. The more centered your contact, the purer the shot. What about when creating friction for a rip? Should you contact the upper part or the center? The upper part. This is because to create friction, you need to brush the ball. Contacting the upper part maximizes the brushing distance as your racket moves with the ball. If you try to brush from the middle or lower part, the contact distance is too short, and you won't be able to grip the ball properly. Let me demonstrate a couple more. I used 50% power on those shots. And this is basically full power. Honestly, 50 to 60% power is enough to win the point. I rarely use a full power punch in a match because I won't take that risk. I stick to the first type of punch. Keep the motion small and your body still. This method of generating force is much more consistent. I only use a full power punch like the one I just showed if I have a lead of 3 to 4 points or more. A high level in table tennis means you have a more mature understanding and ability to adjust to the ball. Let's talk about the feeling of the ball sinking into the blade or making it feel through. How do you achieve that? Look, if my distance to the ball is this close, with the same contact speed, the ball doesn't sink in, right? But if I pull back and create space between me and the ball, now it feels like it goes through the blade. Why do pros, equipment sellers, and advanced players always talk about this through feeling? You might think it doesn't matter, but for professionals, if we don't feel the ball sink in, we have no confidence in the shot. It's unnerving. Because you don't know how the ball is going to come off your racket. That through feeling gives us the touch and feedback. For example, I just punched a ball long. I immediately know why I made that mistake, and with a micro adjustment in my hand, the next ball is on the table. So for amateur players, developing this through feeling is a skill you should actively pursue, especially on your attacking shots. The most important key to the punch is creating a sense of space. Why should you only punch when the opponent's ball isn't fast and doesn't have heavy topspin? Because you need time to create that space. Therefore, the first principle of the punch is to bring your hand in very close to your body, then extend outwards. Punch from a position close to your body. Don't punch out in front of you like you would with a backhand rip. To prepare, first pull your upper arm and elbow back close to your body, and then push forward into the shot. For the punch, bring your arm in close, then push out. Don't keep your elbow and arm forward like a rip. Instead, pull everything back together and push everything forward together. This is the first key to the punch. Second, many of you said my punch is very solid, while others commented, I hit the ball long whenever I use power. If you look closely, you punch like this, whereas I punch like this. Mine is a push punch. Yours is a flick punch. If you raise your elbow, your wrist will inevitably flick. My elbow points downwards, allowing me to punch with an upright racket. I use a push punch. If my wrist were loose, I couldn't guarantee it would stay fixed when I generate power. But with my elbow down, my wrist is naturally upright, which minimizes the chance of it flicking. The difference between your motion and mine is huge. Punching with a backhand drive technique easily leads to lifting the arm and flicking the wrist. I keep my racket upright and push through. The ball is pushed forward. Look closely, with an upright racket, the face is naturally angled, not flat. The tip of the racket points diagonally up, which is how you lock your wrist. If you let your racket drop, you are much more likely to flick your wrist. Because any rotation of the racket face will cause the ball to go off the table. So, if you want to punch with power during a backhand rally, after a few blocks, you should use this elbow upright, push punch technique. It's much more consistent. For a backhand punch, you must keep your elbow vertical and use a pushing motion. If you use a backhand drive motion that involves rotating your racket face and forearm, adding power will make you miss. This is especially true in a match when you're moving and your form breaks down. That's why all my punches are push punches. Keep the elbow and forearm vertical, and ensure your racket face is pushing through the ball, not rotating around it. Remember this. It is absolutely crucial. The key takeaway is, do not rotate your racket face or your forearm. You must push straight forward. Now that we've covered making solid contact, let's talk about adding power. Generating power on the backhand is actually harder than on the forehand. Most amateur players lack that explosive burst. So how can we make the shot more powerful and explosive? The secret is to not let your upper arm travel too far forward. When you prepare to swing, you must use sequential power. Use your upper arm for the first third of the motion. Then stop it and let your forearm accelerate forward. This forearm thrust is the most critical part of the power generation. For shakehand players, it's the index finger. For penhold, it's the 3 fingers on the back. This area on the back of your hand is the most important. When your thumb pushes forward to apply pressure, can you stabilize that force? It should feel like a sharp snap, not a loose thwack. If your hand is loose, even slightly, at the moment of impact, you will make an error. So, as you move through the ball, you need to feel that solid, locked-in contact. Use the back of your hand to generate force. Make solid contact, power with the back of your hand, and push. Using the back of your hand for power is extremely important. After you generate force, the back of your hand must remain firm to lock in that power. If it bends outwards or downwards after contact, for any grip, you are guaranteed to make an error. This is why the backhand punch demands such high precision from your hand. Therefore, throughout the entire motion, from backswing to contact to follow through, the back of your hand must remain tense. The thumb provides the force, and the back of the hand provides the stability. If it wavers even a little, you'll make a mistake. The fourth key point is the racket face angle. Let me ask you, have you ever seen a shot like this in a professional match? We're talking about professional players here, an amateur player definitely can't hit a shot like this. Have you ever seen this kind of motion? Would you say this motion involves a change in the racket angle? Yes, the racket face is definitely changing. So why are they changing their racket angle? Because the ball is coming from a player like Wang Chuqin or Fan Zhendong. The incoming ball has extreme topspin, so they have to hit down on it. A simple forward push can't control that much spin. They have to move forward and downward to keep the ball on the table. However, amateur players rarely face that level of spin. If you try to copy this professional technique, you'll cause yourself a lot of problems and hit the ball into the net. If your opponent gives you a flat ball with no spin, just push straight forward. When you punch, keep your racket angle stable. When you rip, also keep your racket angle stable. If the opponent's ball has heavy spin, that's when you need to punch downward. Or, rip downward. You have to adapt to the incoming ball. Many beginners who have been playing for only 2 or 3 years make the mistake of trying to copy Fan Zhendong or Ma Long's technique. If your opponent's level is not that high, you must stick to the fundamental technique. So, for your backhand, under normal conditions where your opponent isn't ripping the ball with heavy spin, your racket angle must remain stable. The angle you use in your backswing is the angle you use at contact, and the angle you use in your follow-through. The biggest problem for amateurs is constantly making errors because their racket face is unstable. This is especially true on slow, easy balls, where you end up defeating yourself. Those are the most frustrating errors. For all basic backhand drives and rips, your racket face must remain consistent. If I'm going to rip, I use that racket angle from start to finish. If I'm going to drive, I use that angle from start to finish. That's the only way to guarantee the ball will land on the table. The same principle applies to the punch. And it applies to the rip as well. Whether you're ripping or punching, you can only be consistent if you keep your racket angle stable. The kids I coach do this too, they're all over the place in matches. Why does this happen? They are always trying to adjust the ball's trajectory with their racket face, wrist, and fingers. Don't do that. What should you use to adjust? Adjust with your distance to the ball. If the ball is high and you want to attack, get your racket up and behind it. If your racket is below a high ball, your upward swing will create too much arc, and the ball will go long. At a higher level, if you and your opponent are in a counter-looping rally, you must use a rip drive. This technique involves applying side downward force on top of your standard rip. But if you're not at that level and are facing a ball with average spin, all these extra, incorrect movements will cause you to miss a very simple shot. The smaller your motion, the fewer mistakes you will make. The more fancy your technique, the more variables you have to control, which means more opportunities for error. So please remember this, to develop a good backhand, whether it's a punch or a rip, you must lock your racket face. This is how you'll learn to control the ball and execute both shots effectively.